We're continuing our talk on this emotion of awe. So I'm going to show you a short video clip. And in this clip, some of you may have seen this. In this clip, there are people passing a basketball back and forth. All right? You've got a job to do, and it's a simple job. There are people in white t-shirts, and there are people in black t-shirts. Your job is to count the number of passes that the people in the white t-shirts do, okay? Which t-shirts are we counting? White t-shirts. There's a prize. Count how many passes the team in the white jerseys makes, t-shirts. That's it. Just count them. Ready? All right, how many did you count? Oh, I got 16, 15, 10. Some of you guys can't count. Correct answer is 15 passes. Yes. So if you said 15, you get free coffee. All right, so 15 passes. Now I got another question, all right? How many people, raise your hand if you saw something unusual in the video. Okay, put your hands down. How many people did not see anything unusual in the video? Raise your hand, come on, put it up. So you didn't see the gorilla in the video? No gorilla, yeah? Raise your hand again if you did not see the gorilla. About half the room, okay. There was a gorilla. So he saw the gorilla. So raise your hand if you saw the gorilla and you counted the passes correctly. Like 6 of you. All right, cool. All right. I'll re-show you the video so you can see the gorilla. You ready? Here you go. There he is. Look at him. There he goes. Oh. He didn't just walk through. Stops. Beats his chest. Keeps walking. And some of y'all didn't even see that. That's scary. Yeah, it's an experiment that's happened and that happens every time. About half the people will not see the gorilla. And there's a reason for it. The psychologists call this inattentional blindness. Inattentional blindness. And what it is when our attention is narrowly focused on something, we are trying to count these passes, we can completely miss something that is obviously happening right in front of us. This happens all the time with Maudie. I save her life weekly. She said, I knew you were going to bring this up. We'll be walking, and I'm like, stop, that's a car coming. Like, you're going to die. I think she does it just to make me feel good, but yeah, we'll miss. That's what it is. We'll miss something. The gorilla, it isn't invisible. It was in the video. Half of you saw it, but our attention just isn't available to see it. Turns out that this isn't just a funny psychological experiment. I think it points to a lot of things in our lives and how our life works out in a lot of ways. It's a actually really good picture of how anxiety works. If you're experiencing anxiety, your mind focuses in. When you're anxious, when you're worried, when you're afraid, your attention kind of narrows. The brain shifts into this threat detection mode. You're trying to scan for danger and figure out what is happening. What could go wrong? What might we lose? Who might hurt us? Where is the threat? What did I do wrong? Right? And researchers studying anxiety have found that when the brain is operating from fear, our perception shrinks. We become hyper-focused on problems, threats, and urgency. We begin missing other things that are still present. We just miss them. And we see this happen in a story in Scripture that I think we've looked at from a different angle before. And so I want to look at it and point this out. There's two sisters, Mary and Martha, and Jesus comes to their home to visit them. It's in Luke 10, and it goes like this. Luke 10, verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparation that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So Jesus is visiting this home, and it's one of those moments where Mary's like, all right, we gotta get this stuff together. But if Jesus is in your home, you want to be fully present for that, right? Like you want to be present for Jesus, but Martha is moving through the house. She's trying to hold everything together. She's like hospitality, food, preparation, expectations. Like you guys have had parties at your house before, right? The Greek word used in this story that Jesus says to Mary, it means to be pulled apart, dragged in different directions. Sorry, not Mary, Martha. Her attention is fragmented, and her mind is everywhere while Jesus is sitting in her home. And eventually, the frustration spills out. Like, Lord, don't you care that she is not helping me? Tell her to help me. You can hear this, right? You can hear this conversation. You can hear the exhaustion in that moment. Jesus answers her in a way that is incredibly gentle. He's like, you're worried. You're distracted by so many things. He's not shaming her. He's simply naming what's happening. Your attention has been captured by your anxiety. And some of you in here are like, no, she needs to get this stuff done. But does she? That's the question. That Jesus, does this really matter right now? Mary, he says, has chosen the better thing. For a long time, I think this story has been interpreted as if Jesus is saying that like contemplation is more spiritual than work. But I don't think that's what he's saying here. Mary and Martha are living inside the exact same moment, same house, same evening, same Jesus, but they're experiencing two completely different realities. Martha's attention has collapsed into urgency. And again, let me say this about Martha. I don't think this was just something she thought up. I don't think it's something that she's like, I'm going to make sure that I'm worried about everything and anxious, and I'm going to do this. This is culture has taught her, would be my guess, that this stuff needs to happen. There's a level of expectation that I must meet. Jesus is in my home. And then Mary's attention is wide enough in this moment to receive the moment. And when your attention is widened like that, something else becomes possible. Curiosity. When you sit down and you listen, curiosity becomes this this place that you are living. Researchers that are studying awe, they've discovered something that's pretty fascinating. People who regularly experience awe actually become more comfortable with uncertainty. Their brains become less desperate for quick answers. They're less reactive. They're more open. The opposite, fear demands certainty. Fear wants simple explanations. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who's good? Who's evil? Fear wants clear enemies and wants clear answers. But awe does something different. We talk about this almost every week now. Awe expands the mind. And psychologists say that when this happens, when we encounter something vast, right? You've heard this definition. When we encounter something vast, so beautiful, so unexpected that our normal mental framework can't explain it. And instead of panicking, the mind expands. Curiosity then replaces certainty. And that shift turns out to be deeply connected to Scripture, as we've talked about for months, where the writer of Proverbs in the wisdom literature says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but the Hebrew word we've talked about doesn't really mean terror or fear. It means awe or wonder or reverence. This kind of overwhelming realization that you are standing inside something bigger than your current understanding. And when you think about it, this is exactly where wisdom begins. This has been the deep dive, because it makes sense, because to me, fear doesn't lead to wisdom. In fact, we know that fear closes us off. I need certainty. I can't be curious. But awe does the opposite. Because wisdom does not start when you think you understand everything. Wisdom begins when your perspective becomes wide enough to realize that you don't. And that shift, I think, matters because fear and awe produce two very different ways of seeing the world. Fear simplifies it. Fear turns people into categories, into enemies, outsiders, threats. We see this happening constantly in the world around us, even in the church. Like, think about it. Right now, our country is talking about and in a conflict with Iran. And you hear voices, political voices, even religious voices, that are framing this conflict as spiritual. They're using spiritual terms to frame what is happening in the country of Iran, as if it's part of some prophetic script, part of the end times timeline. Anybody else left behind? Red moon? Part of a holy war between the good and evil, right? We've separated who's good, who's evil. And when that lens becomes dominant, the people living in the other country, they stop being human beings. They become symbols. They're enemies. They are characters in a prophecy chart. Their lives are just a means to an end. Like that, they've got to die so that Jesus can come. But here's where, for me, this intersection happens in my life. You guys, most of you know this. I did 2 tours in Iraq. Spent 27 months in the Middle East. I was a linguist that studied Persian Farsi, which is spoken, that's the language spoken in Iran. I spent years learning about the Persian culture, Persian history, Persian poetry. My professors in my language school were all from Iran. They had all left at the fall of the Shah, like 1979. they would bring home cooked food to our class, and we'd get to eat like incredible Persian meals. And once you start learning those things, something shifts. Because suddenly Iran is not just a headline. It's people. They're families. They're artists. They're parents. They're kids. People trying to build a life. People laughing around the dinner table. People worrying about the future of their children. Just like us. But fear turns people into symbols. The hope is that when we keep talking about this thing of awe, the hope is that when we experience awe, knowing what it does for us, that it will restore humanity for us. It will restore the idea that these are human beings. Jesus did this constantly throughout the Gospels. Right before this story of Mary and Martha in Luke 10, you get the story of the Good Samaritan. Today, the word Samaritan sounds positive to us. There's charities named after it. But there were centuries of religious hostility between the Jews and the Samaritans. In Jesus' world, Samaritans were the enemy to the Jews around him. So when Jesus tells a story about compassion, the hero of the story isn't the priest, it isn't the religious leader, it's the Samaritan, the outsider, the enemy. In Jesus' story, the enemy becomes the neighbor. And that's what awe does. It brings us back to a place where we realize the connection that we all have. It widens the frame enough to disrupt the categories that fear creates, that we continue to hear. And that perspective, it reaches its peak. And something that Jesus says now at the end of Matthew, that I don't understand how we miss this. That's not true. I do understand. Because whatever lens you're reading through dictates how you understand it. In the end of Matthew 25, verse 35, it says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat." This is Jesus. "I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." He's telling this story about final judgment, about the end, right? And he's telling the story of, hey, when I was hungry, you fed me. And they're like, "What are you talking? No, we didn't. You did the loaves and the fishes thing. That wasn't us." People are asking him, "When did we do this?" Jesus answers with one of the most shocking lines in the entire gospel. If you really look at it, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. Now, the line gets quoted a lot, right? But sit with what Jesus is actually saying. He's collapsing the distance between himself and humanity. He's saying, when you care for someone who is suffering, you're encountering me. And I think there's something even deeper happening here. Jesus is reminding us that humanity is not a collection of disconnected individuals. We are part of a shared whole, a shared humanity. And when awe widens your attention, you begin to see that. You begin to realize that the suffering of another person is not separate from you. That their dignity is tied to yours. That their flourishing is tied to yours. When we care for the least, we are caring for the human family that we belong to. And maybe that's why the ancient wisdom writers said, the awe of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Not fear, awe. Because awe changes the lens through which we see everything. We have choices to make when we encounter things in life. How do we receive them and how do we perceive them? And then what do we do with that? Fear lifts our eyes constantly toward the next threat, the next disaster, the next enemy. Fear keeps scanning the horizon to see what's coming. But awe does something different. Awe will lower our gaze. It brings us back to present moment, back to the people in front of us, back to the humanity that we share with a stranger, back to the neighbor, back to the least of these. And when that shift happens, our vision changes. Literally everything. You see the world differently. Fear teaches us to look for enemies, but awe teaches us to recognize family. Like, think about this. I talked about this a while back. When Jesus says to love your enemy as yourself. Just like in this part of Matthew 25, I think he's doing the same thing there. Love your enemy as yourself. What Jesus is saying is, you are the same. There are enemies. Humanity is humanity. If we're enemies of each other, then we're hurting each other. We're hurting ourselves. Like, this is not how this works. When we are one, you can't be an enemy with yourself then. Jesus reframes this constantly, that they are part of you. Do you see this? They're part of you. Yeah, they speak a different language. They look different. They eat different food. They live somewhere else. They might even be a different religion. They are still part of you because we are human beings. It is what allows us to see Christ in places that fear has told us he could never be. And when we learn to see the world that way, we begin to live with the kind of wisdom the Proverbs were talking about all along. Because awe doesn't change what we feel, it changes what we see. And what we see then shapes the kind of people that we become. We start living differently, we start loving differently, we start seeing differently, and every once in a while, we may even find ourselves doing things that once felt impossible. Like we talked about last week, stepping out of the boat. To walk on water is the miracle that all calls us to. It doesn't make sense. What are you doing? Why do you love this person? Why are you doing? It doesn't make sense. Because the concept of the gospel does not make sense in a fear-driven mindset. But when you step back and you allow awe and wonder to take over, and you allow your perspective to change, you allow your vision to change, how you see other people, we get to live from a place where loving others just seems natural. And this is where I hear this quite a bit in churches right now. You know, the scripture says that they're going to hate you because they hated Jesus. That scripture says they're going to hate you because you're coming and you're talking about, you're telling them what holiness actually looks like. That's not why they killed Jesus. Not because he was being perfect in his behavior, not because he was showing that he was so much better than other people. No, they killed him because he was loving people that they said he wasn't supposed to. Yes, they will hate that. Because when they tell you that this is an enemy, and you go, no, that's my brother, you're now siding with the wrong team. But when you operate outside of that mindset, there are no teams. I'm not on a team. We love each other. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what Christ called us to do. That is the call of the gospel, is to understand that you are now one with Christ. His prayer in John 17 to his Father is, God, I pray that they would know that as you and I are one, that we are one and that they are one. The idea is that we are supposed to just be loving each other. But we've turned this thing inside out. And so dropping bombs on schools full of little girls gets brushed off. It's a casualty of war, which is really, really easy to say when you haven't picked up human remains off the ground of the Middle East. But when you have, you realize that this is no different than me. They are no different than, what are we doing? Fear will allow us to distance ourselves and call people enemies. The call of the gospel, the call of the life of Christ is to pull us back, say, no, widen your vision. Look at all that is happening. And when you do, you will experience this emotion called awe. And awe will call you into a place where you are more curious and more kind and more generous and more caring, because you understand that to love my neighbor is to love myself. Which is why every single week our call here is to say, Arsenal, go love well, because that is who you're made to be. I love you guys. We'll see you next week.